What if I told you that a mythical hero, one you thought was pure legend, left behind a tangible legacy, something you can actually touch? His name is Bjorn Ironside, son of the legendary Ragnar Lothbrok. We know him as his father's shadow, a character from brutal sagas where blood and glory are woven into a single tapestry. But on the secluded Swedish island of Munsa, there is something that changes everything: his burial mound. This isn't just a hill, it's a stone heart beating in unison with history for 1,000 years. This is the hard evidence that rips Bjorn from the pages of epic poetry and places him at the center of real events. So who was he, this Ironside? A ghost from the past, or a cold-blooded strategist who forged himself a crown through strength and cunning, founding the dynasty of the first Swedish kings? Forget everything you thought you knew about typical Viking raids on the misty shores of England. Bjorn's story is the very definition of audacity. In 859 AD, he assembled an armada of 62 ships and aimed it not north, but into the very heart of the civilized world, the Mediterranean Sea. This wasn't just a plundering raid, it was a direct challenge to the old empires, a journey from the icy fjords to the burning sands of Africa, from looted Spanish cities to the walls of mythical Rome. This expedition would write his name into history forever, and it did. But at what cost? We will follow the scars his fleet left across the map of Europe to understand how the greatest navigational error in Viking history didn't destroy Bjorn, but paradoxically made him a king. The mid-9th century, the Viking Age, is in full swing. Europe trembles at the sound of oars and the sight of striped sails. The name of Ragnar Lothbrok, conqueror of Paris, echoes from Ireland to Francia. To be his son meant to be born with a sword in one hand and the crushing burden of glory in the other. For Bjorn, this legacy was both a blessing and a curse. Every raid he led, every city he captured, was inevitably compared to his father's deeds. To escape this shadow, he had to do something unthinkable. Not just repeat a raid on a wealthy monastery, but shatter the very boundaries of the known world. The idea was likely born in the mind of his mentor, Hastein, one of the most cunning and ruthless sea kings of his era. He proposed what no one had dared before: to gather a fleet and sail south to the Mediterranean, to the mythical shores where, according to rumor, Rome itself lay, the heart of the fallen empire, overflowing with treasure. In 859, the mouth of the Loire River in France became the assembly point for the greatest armada ever to sail for the southern seas. 62 longships. This wasn't just a fleet, it was a floating city of warriors, ready to stake everything on glory and gold. At the head of this force was Bjorn. He was no longer a youth, but a battle-hardened chieftain, and this expedition was his ultimate test. The fleet's departure was an act of pure defiance. They were deliberately turning their backs on the familiar, predictable lands of the north, where the rules of the game were clear, and hurtling toward the unknown. Their maps were scraps. Their knowledge of future enemies was vague and built on rumor. This wasn't just a voyage, it was a leap into the abyss, where every sunrise could be their last. In that moment, Bjorn stopped being just Ragnar's son. He was becoming the author of his own saga.
So let's break down what was really driving him. Was it just greed? Hardly. Gold could be plundered from lands much closer to home, with far less risk. The key motive here was psychological: ambition. The Mediterranean expedition was the only way to surpass Ragnar. His father had taken Paris, the Frankish capital, but Bjorn was aiming for Rome, the eternal city, the symbol of all Western civilization. This was a bid for immortality, and we can't discount the influence of Hastein. He was an older, cynical, and experienced Viking who understood that true power wasn't just strength, but knowledge. He saw the world was changing and wanted to look beyond the horizon, to bring back not only treasure, but technology, tactics, and information. For Bjorn, this was a chance to forge his own name. For Hastein, it was a chance to execute a strategic vision that would ever change the Vikings' concept of the world. They were both chasing glory, but each defined it differently.
After battling the storms of the Bay of Biscay, Bjorn and Hastein's fleet smashed into the northern coast of Spain. But a nasty surprise awaited them. The kingdom of Asturias, hardened by decades of war with the Moors, fought back furiously, forcing the Vikings to retreat with heavy losses. The first lesson was learned. The Mediterranean wasn't defenseless England. But instead of turning back, Bjorn did something completely unpredictable. He led the fleet further south, rounded the Iberian Peninsula, and passed through the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar. For the Norsemen, this was like entering another world. They found themselves in lands ruled not by Christian kings, but by powerful Muslim emirates. It was here, on the coast of North Africa, in modern-day Morocco, that the Vikings first set foot on African soil, launching an 8-day raid that left the local rulers in shock. After the African raid, the fleet turned back north, toward the Balearic Islands and the coast of Spain. And here, fortune finally smiled on them. Pushing upriver deep into the Pyrenees, they reached the capital of the Kingdom of Navarre, Pamplona. The local king, García Íñiguez, was completely unprepared for such a brazen strike from the rear. He was taken captive. This wasn't just a military victory, it was the jackpot. The Vikings didn't kill the king. They issued an ultimatum that would go down in the annals of history: the monarch's freedom in exchange for ransom. The sum was astronomical, even for the time: 90,000 gold dinars. The kingdom had to empty its treasury to save its ruler. In that moment, Bjorn and Hastein transformed themselves from mere raiders into major league players. They weren't just stealing gold, they were trading in the fates of entire nations. But why demand a ransom instead of just sacking the city? Here we see cold calculation, not blind rage. Killing the king would have brought them glory, but the gold brought them something far more valuable: the ability to continue the expedition. 90,000 dinars was fuel for their war machine, a way to pay their warriors, repair their ships, and buy provisions. Moreover, this episode demonstrates their astonishing capacity for adaptation. In Northern Europe, they were used to hit-and-run tactics. Here, in the complex political landscape of the Mediterranean, they quickly mastered the art of diplomacy and blackmail. Capturing a king wasn't savagery, it was a shrewd political play. They understood that in this new world, a ruler wasn't just a warrior,
but an asset, a symbol that could be converted into a vast fortune. This episode showed that Bjorn and Hastein weren't just brutes, but pragmatic strategists capable of learning and changing the rules on the fly. Now impossibly wealthy, their holds overflowing with Navarre's gold, Bjorn and Hastein set their sights on the ultimate goal. Their fleet sailed along the coast of Provence, leaving a trail of smoke and fear, and entered the waters of Italy. The air here felt different. They saw marble ruins, ancient aqueducts, and cities whose walls remembered the march of legions. Everything told them they were approaching the center of the world, Rome. Ambitions were at a boiling point. Legend says Hastein was burning with the desire to make Bjorn not just a king, but a new Roman emperor. Soon, a wealthy city with high walls and magnificent towers appeared on the horizon. Travelers and rumors confirmed it. This was the place, the city of Luna. To a Viking's ear, unfamiliar with Latin, the name sounded close enough to Roma. They were certain they had found it. The siege began, but Luna's walls were strong and its defenders were desperate. A direct assault failed, and so, as the famous legend goes, Hastein resorted to a trick worthy of Odysseus. He staged the greatest performance in Viking history. Messengers were sent to the city declaring that their chieftain, Hastein, was on his deathbed. He repented his sins and before he died wished to receive a Christian baptism. The bishop of Luna, seeing this as divine providence, agreed. Then a second message: the chieftain had died. His final wish was to be buried on consecrated ground inside the city walls. A procession of grieving Vikings carried a funeral bier into the city's chapel. As soon as the gates closed behind them, the corpse sprang to life. Hastein and his elite warriors drew hidden swords, cut down the stunned guards, and raced to open the gates for their army. The city fell. But as the Vikings, drunk on victory, began questioning their prisoners, a bitter disappointment set in. This was not Rome. What does this story tell us? It's the perfect illustration of the Vikings' dual nature. On one hand, you have unsurpassed tactical genius. The Trojan corpse trick was an act of pure psychological theater, showing their ability to think outside the box and use an enemy's own beliefs against them. They were masters of the ruse. But on the other hand, this episode exposes a colossal weakness, an almost complete lack of strategic intelligence and geographical knowledge. They were the greatest seafarers in the world, but their maps effectively ended where another culture began. They could conquer any city, but they didn't always know which city they were conquering. This fatal mistake at Luna is the moment audacity collided with ignorance. They had reached the peak of their tactical abilities, but ran headlong into the limits of their worldview. And this lesson, learned in the wrong city, would define their journey home. After sacking Luna and realizing their mistake, the Vikings turned back. But the journey home proved just as dangerous as the path to glory. As their battered fleet re-entered the Strait of Gibraltar, an ambush was waiting. The powerful Muslim fleet of Al-Andalus, equipped with Greek fire, dealt a devastating blow. Bjorn lost dozens of ships, but he managed to break through. The great Mediterranean Odyssey, which began in triumph, was ending in a bitter but educational defeat. After nearly 3 years of wandering, in 862, the remnants of the armada returned to the waters of the Loire. They brought back immense treasure, exotic goods, and unbelievable stories, but they had paid a heavy price. The expedition changed them forever. It especially changed Bjorn. He had left as a young chieftain, obsessed with his father's shadow. He returned as a living legend, his name echoing from Africa to Italy. But what do you do with that kind of fame? For Bjorn, the answer was obvious. The next chapter of his life would begin at home, in Sweden. He no longer wanted to be a wandering sea king, living from one raid to the next. The wealth and glory earned in the Mediterranean weren't the end goal. They were startup capital for something much bigger. He headed to the very heartland of the Swedes, the region of Uppland, on the shores of Lake Mälaren. This was the land of his ancestors, a key center of trade and politics. Backed by his fearsome reputation and immense fortune, Bjorn Ironside laid claim to the throne. He didn't just take power by force, he brought with him a status that no other Scandinavian chieftain could match. He was the man who had challenged the entire southern world and returned a victor. That was enough for the local jarls to recognize him as their king. So why did he decide to settle down? Wasn't he tempted to set off on a new expedition? Probably. But the 3-year Odyssey taught him the most important lesson. True strength isn't gold in a ship's hold, it's land under your feet. He had seen the organized kingdoms of Spain, the powerful Muslim emirates, the remnants of Byzantine influence in Italy. He realized the future wasn't in plunder, it was in state building. By founding his capital on the island of Munso, he laid the foundation for a dynasty that would rule Sweden for generations. His nickname, Ironside, likely earned for wearing armor, now took on a new meaning. It symbolized not only his toughness in battle, but the iron will with which he began to forge a unified kingdom from scattered tribes. His transformation from raider to monarch wasn't a betrayal of Viking ideals, it was their logical evolution. Legends, like people, are mortal. They are worn down by time, twisted by storytellers until they become vague fairy tales. The saga of Bjorn Ironside, founder of the Munso dynasty, could have easily dissolved into the ages, becoming just another heroic poem of the North. For centuries, historians argued, where does the real man end and the mythical hero begin? His Mediterranean campaign seemed so unbelievable that many dismissed it as a skald's fiction, a poetic exaggeration. Without physical proof, Bjorn risked remaining forever in his father's shadow, just a footnote in the story of Ragnar the Great. But he left behind something more durable than gold or glory. He left a testament carved not on a runestone, but in the very earth of Sweden. On the island of Munso, where his court once stood, rises a massive burial mound, Bjornshögen, or Bjorn's Mound. This isn't just an ancient grave. This is the point where history delivers a crushing blow to skepticism. Archaeological research confirms the mound dates precisely to the 8th century, the exact era when Bjorn lived and ruled. It stands among other royal burial mounds, confirming the royal status of the person buried within. This hill is the final thunderous chord of his saga. It physically anchors Bjorn to the map of history, transforming him from a literary character into a real, tangible figure. When you stand at its base, you realize the man buried here actually saw the sands of Africa, sacked cities in Italy, and founded the Swedish kingdom. The myth becomes reality. So who was Bjorn Ironside in the end? He was a bridge between the age of chaotic raids and the era of state building. His Mediterranean Odyssey wasn't just a raid, it was a brutal but effective lesson in political science. The fatal mistake at Luna taught him the limits of brute force, while the colossal ransom for Navarre's king taught him the art of strategy. He returned north not just as a wealthy raider, but as a man with a new vision of the world, a vision he made real by founding a royal dynasty. The mound on Monsu isn't just a grave, it's a monument to that turning point, the moment a Viking raider began to see himself as a king. And that is why Bjorn's story, which began as an attempt to escape his father's shadow, ended with something far greater. He didn't just repeat Ragnar's glory, he channeled the energy of the Viking Age into an entirely new direction, laying the first stone in the foundation of a future nation. But while Bjorn was building his kingdom, his brother, Halfdan Ragnarson, was changing the rules of the game forever. As a leader of the Great Heathen Army, he drowned England in blood and founded the Norse kingdom of Jorvik on its bones. But here's what popular history often leaves out. For Halfdan, one kingdom wasn't enough. His ambition crossed the Irish Sea, and he did the unthinkable. He conquered Dublin. History remembers him as the only Viking to simultaneously rule two kingdoms on opposite sides of the sea, in England and in Ireland. How did one man hold a double crown, and what price did he pay for unrivaled power? To see this story of boundless ambition and the inevitable reckoning, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. The next chapter will prove that reality is far more incredible than any saga.